Hey, good afternoon, and welcome to the Tottenham Hotspur pre-match build-up here on Stateside Footy. And I hope you guys are enjoying your afternoon so far, especially my friends over there in the UK. Quickly, before we get into it, make sure you hit the like and subscribe buttons, and of course the notification bells as well too, so you don't miss out on any of the upcoming content here on Stateside Footy. All right, well, joining me today is an extremely talented content creator. And a even better lad himself from Scarfe Talk Spurs. Obviously, it's Harry Scarfe. Good afternoon, Harry. Hopefully you're doing well this weekend.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me. I always love coming on here. My second appearance, I believe. So Looking forward to getting into it. And by the way, I think I said it before, but I really do like that intro. I think it's fantastic and gives you goosebumps going into it.
Yeah, you know what's awesome about it is because obviously I'm obviously American, and there's several American ties to Tottenham Hotspur, and of course I can't not highlight some of those players in the intro, obviously, because
Exactly.
it is what it. I mean, I got the American flag hanging behind me, and of course Clint's jersey right there, so of course you got to do it. You just have no choice.
Exactly, love it. But thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely, man. All right. So quickly, before we get into it, we actually have some news and notes. And listen, I don't like starting off my shows with a bummer, but it is kind of a bummer because a historical club in England has entered into administration, and it absolutely sucks. And of course, Sheffield Wednesday. And yesterday, Sheffield Wednesday was deducted 12 points automatically for entering into administration. And now they sit on the bottom of the championship in -6 points. And usually, Harry, when a team enters into administration, it's never really a good thing with the supporters. As a matter of fact, it essentially means you're going to be relegated. And of course, in this case, it means back to League One for Sheffield Wednesday, the biggest club outside of the Premier League in England. And when I heard about this, man, I just felt absolutely gutted because I know exactly what Sheffield Wednesday, this club, means to the community in Sheffield. And I understand the history, obviously 4 league titles, in the old First Division, 3 FA Cups, and just a huge, cast of players, great players that have been through Wednesday. And I think Chris Waddle actually played for Wednesday at one point. And just a cast of very good players. And all of a sudden now, they get bought out by, this Thai owner, Shaqiri, or Jepsum, yeah, you know who I'm talking about, Shaqiri. And all of a sudden, he runs them into the ground. I mean, we're talking not paying taxes to the British government, not paying his players, and essentially alienating the supporters' trust from the actual team itself, to the point where this dude actually puts his name on the North Stand. And of course, when it goes to administration, the supporters' trust removes his name from the North Stand, which is absolutely awesome to see. I saw those photos this morning. But that being said, this doesn't feel like a normal administration, considering the fans trust immediately comes out with a statement saying, okay, listen, no more boycotts. As a matter of fact, let's go ahead and use this as an opportunity, because now he's, Chansiri, is now out of the club for good. So this, from a supporter's perspective, this is actually a beautiful thing, because now all of a sudden there's no more boycotts. Supporters are now picking up pies and pints from the, inside Hillsborough. They're buying merchandise now. And it almost feels like, from a Sheffield Wednesday perspective, this is actually a new day.
Exactly. Now, I think you put it really nicely, Steve. Not too much to add to that from myself, apart from just saying it is, of course, sad. However, having said that, I think there's a sense of relief among the Sheffield Wednesday fan base. If you want any evidence of that, the fans have spent a lot of money. We're talking about £100,000 in the last 24 hours. The clear support is there, and the amount of people today in attendance for Sheffield Wednesday's match is absolutely full. Like you were saying, with boycotting, that's completely gone. Of course, his name's now gone from the stand. So getting a 12-point deduction and going into administration is awful for any club, and the supporters in particular, the ones that I feel for. They really feel that, they love the club. So that will hurt whatever team you support that goes into administration. But I just think there is a little bit of sense of relief. It's like short-term pain for long-term gain. This is what the Sheffield Wednesday fans wanted in terms of the owner being gone. Of course, it's horrible to see them in administration and in this sticky situation. But what also doesn't help away from that is they've had a poor start to the season, of course, with all this going on anyway, and loads of different problems they've had on and off the pitch. So that's why they find themselves, as you say, -6, as you say, in the league, because they only got 6 points anyway. So they find themselves in a predicament where they didn't start the season well. They're they're bottom, weren't they, with Sheffield United for a couple of weeks or so. But I think there's optimism and there's just like a buzz, which is very clear to say. I'm not a Sheffield Wednesday fan and I haven't even followed this situation that closely, but you can sense a little bit of excitement, a little bit of a buzz, and that is enough to give a team a chance to stay up. So horrible situation, but I think they can turn it around. I think this is what they wanted, even despite the pain they're going to suffer because of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I always thought Sheffield Wednesday was a sleeping giant because, again, when you look at the history and they were a part of the original Premier League. I think they were in the Premier League all the way until like 99, 2000 before they ultimately dropped out. So this team, the way that I look at it is is kind of a sleeping giant. If the right owners come in and recognize exactly the support that they have, and if they actually do a very good job financially, if they can take this team back to the Premier League. This thing is going to pop off absolutely beautifully. And I think the last time I remember, somebody coming in and actually doing it right was Crystal Palace. And if you remember, they went into administration in 2009, 2010, and were on the brink of liquidation before Steve Parish and his consortium stepped in. And within 3 years, they were back in the Premier League. And so it absolutely can happen. And I certainly hope the best for Sheffield Wednesday, because quite honestly, I just hate absolutely seeing this. And I guess this opens up another conversation about whether or not they need like a independent arbiter in football to avoid owners doing these type of things. But that being said, that's a discussion for a different day. But that being said, it is what it is, and I certainly hope the best for Sheffield Wednesday and their supporters.
Absolutely, well said.
All right, so now turning to the conversation of why people are tuning in. Of course, it's Tottenham Hotspur, and tomorrow they at 12:30 Eastern, 5:30 UK time, they make the trek up to the Hill Dickson Stadium. Spurs' first opportunity to see that new stadium up there on Merseyside, and of course, Everton is being led by the great David Moyes, who has not only stabilized this club, but is also giving them a new identity. Considering the last time that we saw Everton last season under Sam Dyche, it almost felt like the wheels were falling off. And so from that standpoint, fantastic for Everton. But for Tottenham Hotspur, we have to talk about the attack, because, when you're looking at some of these metrics here and you're seeing that the fact that, they're sitting on 14 points, they have 14 goals to the good, 7 against, a +7, some people are like, okay, well, what's the issue, right? They're scoring goals. But when you kind of look at these kind of things from match to match to match, it doesn't necessarily paint a great picture. As a matter of fact, Richarlison unfortunately has taken a dip in form outside of the great opening match against Burnley to start the season. He's kind of been lost in the forest. Matisse Tell did get a solid goal against Leeds right before the international break. But that being said, Spurs just unfortunately do not have a striker right now that is actually going to be able to perform to what Thomas Frank needs a striker to be. There's instability on the left-hand side, so unfortunately Spurs have looked a little, I guess you can say, predictable in the attack. And so from that standpoint, it's manifested itself like midweek against Monaco in the Champions League. They looked absolutely flat to the point where you're kind of scratching your head like, wait a second, this isn't Arsenal. This is Monaco. Not exactly world beaters in the French Ligue 1, right? So it's like, okay, so where does this team go from here, right? Because we're still a couple months away from the January transfer window. Nothing, outside of Dominic Solanke coming back from his injury is actually going to remedy the situation, unless you're committed to either Rando Kolomowani up top or potentially making a formation switch. Where do you see this attack at this point, and what does this mean coming into this Everton match?
Yeah, it's a sticky one, isn't it? I think Frank come in with the sole aim to improve defensively, and we've done that. So I want to give him credit firstly for that. But on the attack, there's no doubt about it. We need to be A, creating more chances, and B, scoring more goals. Ultimately, that's how you win football matches. The best form of defense is attack, or the best form of attack is defense. It works both ways. You could literally flip it both ways. But the point is, we need to attack more. So, in terms of the left wing position, firstly, I think it's criminal, and I'll say it again, that we haven't replaced Son. But I think in terms of what we've got now, Wilson Odobert for me looks the most likely to make that position his. I think he's improving game by game, growing in confidence. I don't think he's perfect. I don't even know if he's got the quality for the long term, but I think he's the most likely, the most promising. The best of a bad bunch, unfortunately, is what they call it. But I think he is getting better. Then up front, of course, let's be clear, we've got a load of strikers. It's just have we got the quality or not, which is a genuine question that is looking like unlikely at the moment. It looks like we haven't. But, you've got Moani, of course. You've got Richarlison. You've got Solanke, who's out injured. Tell can play there. And most of the time under Frank has started the striker position. You've got Dane Scarlett as well. Do forget about that. With Tell, it's interesting because I do remember Frank saying that he sees him more as the left winger. But as far as I can think back, he's mainly played him as a striker. So that is interesting. And then on that right-hand side, Kudus has made that position here. So he's been so good, Mohamed Kudus. And we're talking about Brendan Johnson, a player that was our top scorer last season, but can't get into the team. That's full credit to Kudus. So attack is a problem. But if I'm honest with you, I actually think the problem's in midfield and finding the right balance and creativity. And I think it's hindering the attack. Yeah, I think it's the problem here. The attack's a problem, but when you don't go the right creative players or don't get the right balance, then that hinders you going forward quite a bit.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because my guy Wayne Bonner here in the chat actually kind of took the words right out of my mouth because I was actually going to go to the midfield three, and he like I'm exactly kind of where he's at with Polina, Betancourt, and Sarr as our best midfield three because I think it actually allows Xavi Simons to actually play on the left hand side. I actually think as of right now, Xavi Simons probably is better suited on the left side right now instead of the number 10. I don't necessarily think it's an issue of potentially he can't handle it. I just think when you talk about space and the creativity of what Xavi Simons needs to actually be effective, I think that actually makes a little bit more sense on the left-hand side. Just because, I from what I've been seeing, it almost feels like teams have kind of been clogging the middle, taking, closing distance. So Xavi doesn't necessarily have a lot of opportunity to do what he does best. But that being said, we have seen him on the left-hand side actually has space to whip in balls and actually be a little bit more creative in ones and twos and some of these other things. And me personally, I just feel like I tend to agree with you that the midfield three is kind of the start of, is kind of the start. We're not exactly direct through the midfield, especially when Xavi's playing at that 10 position. I feel like it's a little bit better suited on the left-hand side. And I think Sarr doesn't necessarily get the credit that he necessarily deserves. He's actually, me personally, I think he's probably one of our best midfielders.
Yeah, absolutely agree with that. And that midfield balance, to get that right, is crucial. And of course, we want to play this game of having an ideal three, a best three, which is being engaged with in the comments. I totally understand and agree with that. But I think it's going to change on a game-by-game basis. But right now, Frank needs to find his best 11. He says he thinks he has. I'd push back on that. And if he has, I'm a little bit concerned. Paulinho and Betancourt, just quickly, I like both of them, but they both kind of do a similar job. When you've got two players that do very well, and that's what makes this conversation difficult. But they're both like, should I be doing that? Should it be me? Because they both are number sixes. And I've never known a team do well with having two number sixes. You could be more defensively minded game by game. Like as you said, reference there is a little joke. If Arsenal away, Man City away, or we had the pleasure of playing Real Madrid away, let's say in the Champions League, PSG away coming up, that's when you probably do start with two sixes, Betancourt and Paulinho next to each other. But we should not be going into games like Wolves at home, going with Betancourt and Paulinho, in my opinion, when you've got Sarr on the bench, Bergwijn on the bench, these players that can make an impact. So find that three is crucial. Sarr's been very good, but, was out through injury very, very briefly, has come back in and not got the minutes I think he deserves. Of course, we don't know what's going on in his training. And I just think that's a real shame because he's a player that started the season well. Bergwijn could make the same case. Gray as well, we're forgetting here. He's done very well in the 8 this year. So there is definitely, I won't play this game that we lack quality in midfield. We've got a poor midfield. We've got more options than ever. Strength and depth, quality too. And we haven't in some positions. We can look, me and you can probably both agree we don't have the quality in attack. But in midfield, we certainly do.
I would agree with that as well too. And one of the things that actually is driving me batshit crazy is the fact that a lot of fans are putting this on Thomas Frank, where when you look at his quality at Brentford when he left, right, and this is the funniest part, right, because he had Wissa, he had Mbeumo, he had some of these guys where it actually these guys were quality. to the point where he was able to do what he was able to implement whatever whatever attack that he he had a tactical vision for, right? And me personally, he's doing the exact same thing at Brentford that he is doing at Tottenham Hotspur, right? The difference is the quality is not there, right? And so the interesting thing here is that fans will be quick to push blame onto Richarlison or Kolo Muani or Matisse Tell or some of these other guys, and then completely just it's okay. Odegaard he's a young guy. He's it's like whoa, hold up real quick, right? Because if you're going to shift blame on players, this is an attacking group. So the attacking group has to actually be held responsible, regardless if they're 2 years into the league or 19, 20 years old, whatever the case may be. These guys are responsible for the goal production of this team, right? And so me personally, I don't think this is a Thomas Frank issue, right? Thomas Frank, especially with quality, can score like his attacks can score goals, and at times they can score goals in bunches, whether it's beginning of the game, whether it's mid, whether it's at the end of the game, whatever the case may be. Like we have seen a Thomas Frank attack do damage in the Premier League. Me personally, this is an issue of quality, and this does not get remedied until the January transfer window. It's unfortunate. I hate to say it because we're not going to get Dejan Kulusevski back anytime soon. We're probably not going to get Slinky back for a couple more weeks. So what it is what it is. And so this team either has to do what we did against Aston Villa, which is figure out to score within the first 10 minutes and try to build momentum and try to score that second goal off that momentum, or like we're going to see a lot of games like we saw against Aston Villa.
100%. I've got no more to add to that. I think you're right. And Frank needs to. I think he's got too much criticism so far. I think if you said to any Spurs fan, after the second international break, just after, you'd be sixth place, you'd still be in the Carabao Cup, you'd be unbeaten in the Champions League. I think they would have taken that. It's because we have a flying start and we concede a couple of goals and a couple of dodgy performances and people jump very quickly. But what do people expect? We finished 17th last year. It's a good season because we won the Europa League, but we're talking about we're in sixth place and we're going game by game. And Frank, okay, is implementing his style very slowly, and we haven't seen a lot. But people are seriously questioning, and it's not just one or two people. The rumblings that are going on, and it will get bigger if we don't get a result this weekend. But whether Frank is the right man for the job, and I just find that absolutely insane. We're not even at the end of October, and we're questioning whether a manager that has done so well with his previous club. And we talk about giving opportunities. We don't do that at Tottenham. So it's frustrating. I think he's done okay so far. In fact, I'd say he's done well to sort out the defence. We kept another clean sheet against Monaco. Yes, we didn't look great. We kept a clean sheet. It's about turning kind of improving the performances and then eventually getting the results as well. At the moment, we're doing the opposite, really. We're getting results, kind of. But we're not having the performance. But I think fans are too reactionary at the moment.
Yeah, results in the aggregate, right? So it's like, on the one hand, we pitched a clean sheet, but on the other hand, well, they also did as well too. But that being said, I think what this is a combination of. I would think that it's a combination of over rotating in certain matches. I think we've seen that a little bit, especially in the Premier League, and I think it goes back to what you said about Frank not necessarily knowing exactly what his best 11 is. Now, again, he claims to know what that is, but we'll see, right? Me personally, I want to see two different squads, right? A definitive Premier League 11, the guys that that are going to be the bread and butter of what the season is actually going to be and what the player identity of this team is going to be, and then also one for the Champions League as well too, right? Sometimes I think that Thomas Frank maybe errs on the side of caution with heavy rotation. But that being said, it's like as this season continues to progress along, I think we know exactly who he's going to be relying on versus who we can.
100%. Well said.
Yeah. So the interesting thing about this is when I look at this matchup, and I'm going through this matchup, I essentially my predicted starting 11s. Versus their predicting starting 11s. I feel like Tottenham actually has the advantage in this one. I'm not necessarily impressed with Everton's defense, although they do have some quality in defense. One of the things that I've appreciated about David Moyes is the fact that he stabilized that club. This team is absolutely organized. And they did improve a little bit in the attack as well too, bringing in Jack Grealish. I think that's worked out pretty well for them as well too. And I feel like come the January transfer window, they're probably going to add another striker, and I wouldn't be surprised if that's Richarlison as well too. I've been hearing that rumor being tossed around quite a bit over the last week. and it perfectly makes sense. But that being said, from your perspective, is this, to me, this is a match that Tottenham should come away with the 3 points. Like, I mean, from position to position, I can't necessarily point out an area where they're absolutely better than us.
Yeah, I think you'd probably be right, but I think it's difficult because sometimes I think you've got to go, where at the start of a project under a new manager, and I know that's a massively overused word, but it's a different era, let's say, at Tottenham, because we saw lots of changes, and people just say, well, what do you mean lots of change in the summer? It's just the manager. We've seen a lot, Daniel Levy leaving is another one. That's a big one, though. And we've seen the whole new look board, and that does rub off onto the pitch. I'm not being funny. Different decisions, it's different ideas, and you just need time. There's not going to be plain sailing. So I think there's a case to be made whether a point, I know context is vital, whether a point would be a good thing or not for Tottenham. But at the same time, in my opinion, my only criticism, and I don't know if it's necessarily of Frank, but of the team in general, is I feel like we're settling for points too easy. Like, let's use Wolves at home, for example. Okay, fair play. We don't lose the game. We show good mentality, no doubt about it, to come back in that game. But I look back at that now, especially seeing where Wolves still are in the table, the results before and after our game when they played us and got that, was it 1-1 draw? I look at that still now and I just go, that's just not a good result. We wouldn't have taken that, would we, at the start of the day? We salvaged it being even worse, but there's just this idea that it's a really good point and, it's what we deserved, etc. And like with Bodo as well, I think they improved, don't get me wrong. We showed real mentality to get back into it, but would we have taken it at the start of the day? Probably not. So we get ourselves out of a rabbit hole, do very well, if that makes sense. But it doesn't mean it's a good result. It just means we've saved it being bad, just trying to find a way of making it to make sense. So I know what you mean with Everton, but at the same time, they've been flying going forward. I think if we're serious, it depends what the ambition is this season. If we want top 4, we have to win the game. If we're happy with just getting European places, I think this is a game where you go, win at home against Everton, and if there's a big wave coming at the Hill Dickson Stadium, Everton pressure because they've got a really strong attack, then you may take a draw. And that's not being unambitious, but I'm entertaining the potential discussion for that. So going forward, they look very strong. You know that. And then Dye, Grealish, Dewsbury Hall's been a great signing. But at the same time, we've got, I think, more depth than them, but they have some good quality, especially in forward positions. So I think this is one that you'd go, it has a potential to be a banana skin for Tottenham after a few, what I'd call iffy performances. The results haven't been there in a few recent games. So this is one that is there to kind of could trip Tottenham up. But it's about mentality again, which has been strong under Frank so far. I think winning the trophy helped that. Frank's built on that. So I believe him that we can be okay, but it's just, being a Tottenham fan, you can't help but feel, look, this has potential to be sticky. They're unbeaten at the Hill Dickson Stadium.
Well, the interesting thing about this is Tottenham's road board has been absolutely brilliant, right? They're so far in their Premier League campaign, they've actually traveled incredibly well, have gotten very good results, and of course, obviously at the at City, and of course they absolutely took care of business against Leeds, right? So there seems to be this wide differential between performances at home versus performances on the road. And it feels like they just seem to be able to get results on the road, right? Now, what I will say is that the difference is with City and Leeds and some of our other performance on the road is we're not going to a new stadium, right? So there seems to be something that brings out fans when it comes to shiny new things, right? And so this isn't Goodison Park. This isn't the 100-year history of Goodison Park. This is a brand new shiny toy, and it seems to bring out even something more when it comes to supporters. And I've kind of noticed that, right? The differential between what was then and what is now. And I can remember when we opened up the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, and our supporters went absolutely batshit crazy in that first season in the stadium. So I can understand that, and I would probably think that we're for this season specifically, I would probably assume the fans and supporters are absolutely going to go absolutely batshit crazy whenever they step into that stadium. So there's a real home field advantage for Everton when I think about this matchup. But that being said, man, it comes down to the 22 players that are on the pitch, and I'm trying to figure out whether their attack is going to be better than our defense, right? Because I think one of our strengths is going to be in that back five, and including the double pivot that's going to sit on top of the 18-yard box. I'm just like, okay, well, as far as I'm concerned, they're going to be stuck on the wing. You know what I mean? Like we don't allow necessarily goals in front of the 18-yard box. As a matter of fact, we don't even allow a lot of traffic in front of the 18, which kind of makes Van de Ven and Romero's job a hell of a lot easier, right? So from my standpoint, I'm like, okay, well, if they get pushed to the wings, where's their advantage going to be?
Yeah, it makes a really good point there. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right.
You know what I mean? Like I'm just trying to
Yeah.
think of the last time Spurs allowed opposition to overload centrally, right? To be able to have central runs into the box, really putting pressure on our central defenders right in front of the goal, right? I can't think of the last time that actually happened. Maybe last year under Ange, but certainly not this year under Thomas Frank. We're actually very well organized in defense.
Very well. Yeah, absolutely. He's done very well at that. And I don't think he's getting the credit he deserves for that as well. It's a big turnaround already, just a few games in. Conceded far less goals. So it needs, appreciated, doesn't it, really?
Right. So, I mean, from that standpoint, it's like, okay, well, where in their attacking three are they going to actually have an advantage to actually put goals? I'll just say this, to actually put 2+ goals on us, right? Last year when we went to Goodison Park, right, Ange Postecoglou, like, I guess you can say foolishly played with a back three, and we were completely wide open. And what I consider a bad Everton team, hung three. I think they hung three before halftime, right? So it was like, that's certainly not going to happen this time around, right? So from that standpoint, like our strength is probably going to be, defense with a potential counterattack, right? So where, like that's the thing. It's like I'm trying to scratch, like where are they? Like our defense is not going to allow it. Allow strikers and off strikers and wingers to camp channels. That's not going to play. So it's like I'm trying to rack my brain here. It's like, well, wait a second. I don't think they're going to be able to do that.
Yeah, 100%. I just, you can't help but feeling it. This could be tough for Tottenham, and they're good going forward. But as you said, we have improved under Frank, so be interested. And I would remind people that the games between Everton and Tottenham in recent years have been full of goals. They've been full of entertainment. But someone said to me the other day, do you think it'll be a 0-0? And you instantly go, no, absolutely not. There's always goals in this game. But if you think about it, both Frank and Moyes is a more defensive manager anyway, even though the defense isn't good. It's quite funny. Counter-attacking may be a better way to put it. And Frank at the moment at Tottenham has been very conservative. It's not really his values. He's all about attack and press. And he's saying, what did he say when he first joined the club? If you don't take risks, you are taking a risk. We haven't really seen those words being stuck to yet, which is a shame. But of course, it's early days. But there's a possibility it could be 0-0 because Tottenham, we're good defensively. And Everton have a defensive manager. So don't rule out a 0-0. But I do think generally there'll be goals and entertainment. But I wouldn't rule out anything in this game. And that's the thing. Tottenham have to put a really thorough and professional performance because if we do, we can absolutely get something from the game. We could win this game, even though Everton, they do look good.
Where on the pitch is our advantage, right? We've already highlighted the defensive side of things, right? And you mentioned that Everton isn't exactly as, I guess you can say, compact and solid on defense as we are. So from where on the pitch is going to be our advantage?
A great question. I think our advantage is going to be tough to identify, but I think maybe Mohamed Kudus, I think for him up against Mikalenko, I think that's a real area we can get at. So I think if we use flanks well, because no disrespect to Everton, but where they are a little bit short, in my opinion, is fullback positions. If I had to predict, I think Everton will go with Garner, who is a midfielder, at right back, and I think they go with Mikalenko at left back, which leaves Kudus and I reckon Odebear, but it could be Kudus or Richarlison, you don't know, an opportunity. So that's where I see us really getting in, if that makes sense, and causing problems. And I'm not going to say a striker because whoever it is, Tagarski, who is good and physical, Keane, who's been good this season, O'Brien, who's a decent defender as well, Republic of Ireland, they're all good defenders. So it'd be tough for whoever starts as number 9. But I would say that Richarlison, that's a big area, big player that we could use in terms of, I don't usually say this, but it's against his former club and he loves Everton, but he also loves a goal against them. So could we really use Richarlison, right? Could we use him in the left wing position? Could we use him off the bench? We need to look at what's best for that. So I think we hurt them down the I think we hurt them down the wings. I think the midfield battle is interesting. You hope Tottenham win it because I think we've got more strength and definitely more depth in those kind of midfield positions generally. But Everton have been same time strong there. Garner Gay, they've got more depth, Everton, this season than they've had previously. And an example of that, for example, is Dwight McNeil, who always got in the lineup under Sean Dyche, for example, and he does it now. And that just shows the strength and depth they've got. Grealish and Dye. And Dye's had to move to the right-hand side because to fit Grealish in as well. So that's a good headache for David Moyes. So I think we can get them down the wings. But this has potential to be a difficult game. I think it's at home you feel more confident. But Frank so far, and I believe the team too, have passed, in my opinion, most, if not all, of the kind of mentality tests. This is going to be another one. And it sounds silly in a way, people are going, hang on a minute, Harry, Everton a couple of years ago nearly went down, but this is a new look Everton. We talk about new look Tottenham. This is in terms of new stadium, new manager, fresh ideas. They look a lot stronger. So they won't roll over for Tottenham. That's one thing I absolutely can guarantee.
I would agree.
If we could get a win, that's quite big for Frank as well, to get fans, keep them on side.
The interesting thing about this is I tend to agree with you, and I guess it all depends on exactly who our midfield three is, who is going to be playing up in that 10 position. Is this also an opportunity to see maybe a potential formation change? But that being said, we haven't seen any differential when it comes to formation since I believe the Super Cup, right? So Thomas Frank has literally played essentially the exact same formation from essentially the start of the season until now. So I can't imagine any type of formation change. But that being said, I probably would think that if the advantage is on the wing, for me personally, I can't necessarily see Wilson Odegaard start on the left side. I would probably think that it might make sense to play Xavi Simons out on the left a little bit. That being said, I do agree with you, Richarlison. Right, I think this actually might be a good opportunity for Richarlison to use his strengths in the box to potentially set up, because you did mention those three center backs that Everton definitely possesses. But that being said, one of the things I absolutely do like about Richarlison's game is he always seems to find himself in pretty decent positions to receive balls, whether that's direct or whether that's coming off a cross. And me personally, I just feel like if that is the advantage, whether that's going to be on the right side with Kudus or on the left side, I think that Xavi Simons makes a little bit more sense on the left, because if that really is going to be advantage, that means we're probably going to have a little bit more space, whether that means on the overlap with whoever a left back is going to be, or if it's going to be creating space to get balls into the box. I feel like Xavi Simons makes a little bit better sense on the left-hand side.
That's not a bad shout in this type of game. I'm not sure about going forward, because I think Simons, we haven't seen a lot from him, but it's mainly been in that 10 position. But I think in this game, you're right, because of the weakness of our opponent maybe and the type of game it is. So I want to see Frank set up a little bit bolder this weekend. Easier said than done, because I know Everton are a dangerous team going forward. And that, again, people be thinking, hang on, Harry, if you're saying that Everton's so strong attackingly, why aren't you countering that? I think there's other ways of doing that, and I'm just going to put that out there. I don't want to go too much into it in case you ask me about what my team would be. But for example, Porro is a player who's played a lot of games and isn't as strong defensively. I love him, by the way. Great going forward.
I do too.
Exactly. And we discussed it before, haven't we? A big fan of Porro. But I don't like to use the word drop. Should we take him out of the team for this game? And what makes that difficult is the doggy's out injured and Davis is out injured. So we'd have to play like Van der Ven or Gray left back and the other centre back to do that. But my thinking is Grealish at left wing. Spence is this immense player, 1v1 duels. I'd like him up against Grealish. And I think that's what Tottenham have to do. So in that aspect is where we do cater. But the point is, I think we should approach it with the handbrake off, and we should go for it a little bit. And we need to explore attackingly and be a bit bolder.
Interesting. So you like the idea of Jed Spence on the right-hand side this week?
I do, but I think it'd be unpopular amongst the Spurs fan base, because it would mean playing Gray again, probably at left back, and Van der Ven outside the centre backs. But I think it's a little bit bold. I don't think Frank will do it. But I just think right now the performances. No, exactly. I know, but I just think 1v1, and I love Porro, but that is his weakness. And defensively, he has got better, but 1v1 is where he will struggle. He'll do okay, but Spencer will excel. And when you're up against Grealish, you need someone that does excel, not just does the job just about. We need to be dealing with him 100%, not just getting away with it every time. So I feel a lot more confident with Spence starting to right back. But having said that, then Dye on that left-hand side is equally as good in his own way, and he doesn't get spoken about enough. So Tottenham need to find a way. And being without two fullbacks for this game is really not ideal, even if they're not two starting fullbacks. So that is a problem for Tottenham. So this has potential, like I said, to be a banana skin, and we've got to be very, very careful and go about it the right way.
What is, just out of curiosity, what is the latest on Christian Romero? Because I know he had a knock there, and I think Kevin Tanso stepped in against Villa, and I think he was on the pitch again against Monaco. Is Romero ready for this one?
No, unfortunately not.
So,
Not from what I thought he said in his team news. I seem to remember the team news from Monaco better than I did this game, but I did read it. But I think Romero and Udogie are not involved. I believe that's what he said this weekend. I think they're on their way back. But in terms of Udogie, might be a bit longer. It looks like Romero will be the first of the two. But
okay.
even if he was like a possibility, if he said to me, Romero, 50, 60, 70% chance he's fit, I don't take that chance. Because I'd rather have someone for the long term. If Romero plays and gets a knock and is out for a few more weeks, we've got tough games coming up. If I had to predict, I think they'll probably miss Everton and miss Newcastle. They'll be back for Chelsea at the weekend, especially Romero. I think he'll be, well, hopefully he's back for Chelsea. But at the same time, how many times he played Chelsea and got injured as well. So that's something to be really wary of. But no, the latest on Romero's, I don't think he is available. So it does leave us a little bit of a problem defensively. And fans are getting annoyed that we're no longer keeping the same volume of clean sheets we did at the start of the season, even despite the clean sheet against Monaco. But I'd say look at injuries. We went to that game against Monaco with 11 players ineligible, unavailable. 10 we couldn't control through injury, and 1 we could through Matthias Tell not being selected in the Champions League squad. So that's, it's not easy. And I'm not making an excuse because Ange had that, but we like to paint this idea of like, oh yeah, why is Frank not doing this? Why are we not doing that? I just think overall the reaction, I keep saying it, is I get fans are annoyed and we haven't been perfect. And I thought we would be a little bit better in performances, but we're doing okay. There's no need to panic at this stage. But Romero should be unavailable for this game, which will be a blow, though, to Thomas Frank.
Right, and the reason why I ask is because I'm perfectly happy with Kevin Danso playing in that position. I think Danso himself has actually gotten my respect, and the reason why I say this is because even if Pedro Porro is out on the right hand side, the essential the things that Kevin Danso does are the same things that I actually respect of Christian Romero as well too. He actually covers the back shoulder, the back right shoulder of Pedro Porro pretty well, right? So there is no ability to get around the corner with those two defenders, right? Now, I do agree with you, and I've been consistent saying this, is that as far as I'm concerned, Jed Spence is the best 1v1 defender that we have in the fullback position, right? I mean, I think his resume speaks for itself. But for this one, even if this is going to be a Jed Spence on the left hand side type of thing, I think I'm going to be okay, knowing that Kevin Danso actually does the same things that Christian Romero does. Maybe not at Romero's level, but still certainly enough where there's not going to be free shots in the box, coming around the corner on the overlap, because those two guys combined, have the ability to shut them down off that side of the wing.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Again, well said. Not too much to add to that.
Okay, so here's the thing, right? And we are going to get into the your predicted lineups in about 5 minutes. But I do want to touch on one thing because you brought it up, and quite honestly, I want to talk about it. So we're going to get into it. First and foremost, your thoughts so far on Xavi Simons. Is his inclusion into this Tottenham Hotspur team. Now, when we got him, I thought it was absolutely fantastic because these are the type of players that never seem to land with Tottenham Hotspur. They always seem to land with Chelsea, or they seem to land with Arsenal or Liverpool or some of the bigger clubs in the Premier League. But that being said, we were able to get it done. And when we got him, I was like, holy shit, like this is a big time player. And these are the type of players that I absolutely love for Spurs. Because these are the type of players that tilt the field. And what I mean by that is their individual performances are so good that they stand out. But that being said, you saw it with Red Bull Leipzig. You see it with the Dutch national team when he plays in the 10 position. The dude is just absolutely fantastic. But so far in his early Spurs career, not so much. So first and foremost, your thoughts on Xavi Simons and how he's been used so far.
I like Xavi Simons, but I think it'd be fair to say he hasn't hit the ground running at Tottenham. But there's something, isn't there, about coming to the Premier League, new country, new league, new culture, new teammates, new club, new manager. Everything is different for Xavi Simons. So there seems to be this idea amongst the Spurs fan base that he's going to come in and hit the ground running. That's just not realistic. Liverpool Florian Wirtz is a very good example where he hasn't hit the ground running, even a big price tag. And I think Simons is a gem. I look at him and I like everything I've seen from him in the past, RB Leipzig, etc. But I just think we need to be patient, need to give him time. I think the best way to get used to a new club and your new teammates and play under a new system is to play as much minutes as possible. But also to caveat that, the other side of it, the other side of the stick, is also we shouldn't be forcing him into the team. Because if you're not playing well, you don't get into the team. And you've got to introduce someone gradually. If you just throw someone in all the time, you're not going to get a result as much as minutes they need. So you've got to strike that balance, which is what a manager's paid for. And it's very tough to make those decisions. Simmons' best position is unknown. I think I have no problem. In fact, I think it's a great thing that a player can play more than one position, that versatility. We have it with Jed Spence. We have it with Richarlison. Several players in the Spurs team. Kudus, who you could argue, is another. And that is something you need. Any football club needs. Tottenham Hotspur needs. But also, I do believe you have a primary position. And we don't know what is that with Simmons. I have the feeling it's the number 10 position. In glimpses we've seen, he's been that 10 position. So we haven't seen enough for him. If I'm honest with you, although I don't think he's been a great start, I thought we'd see a tiny bit more. I think that's maybe a little bit of that frustration among Spurs fans. We thought we'd see a trick or two or a, maybe a pass or two, a shot or two that we can get encouraged by. But apart from that little cameo off the bench against Brighton, we haven't seen too much to get excited about. I think come back to this conversation, clip this and come back to this in 2 months. And I think we'll be talking about Simmons that's probably got a couple of goals, a couple of assists under his name and is starting to cause a little bit of problems. I think a lot of it, Stephen, to finish my little piece on this, when you come to the Premier League for a price tag, or when you come to a new club, is a better way of phrasing it, an English club with a price tag, that is instantly put straight back on you, that pressure. And it's not right. We've seen it with Richarlison, totally different player. I think Simmons' ceiling's a lot higher as Avi Simmons. But the point is, Richarlison come for a big price tag, and that's forever been against him if he's not performing every single game. And that'll be the same, and it is the same with Simmons. So patience is needed, as with loads of players like Matthias Tell. Again, don't think he's up to the same level, but give him time, young player. So Simmons, I think people at the moment are being a little bit patient, but how long will that patience last is the question. So, yeah, not great so far. And for me, hasn't done enough to get in the team. But I think over time, coming off the bench, then a few starts here and there, it get up to scratch. And I think I agree with Frank. It's about the waiting game with Simmons.
I've been consistent in saying that for me, football is all about partnerships on the pitch, whether that's center back combinations or whether that's chemistry in the double pivot. It's the same thing with tens and strikers or tens and wingers, these type of things, right? And because we've seen so many goddamn moving parts in that attack outside of Mohamed Kudus on the right hand side, that seems to be a staple. But we've had heavy rotation with the striker position, whether that be from inexperience or a lack of form or injury. And then also Simmons himself playing multiple different positions. I think it's really hard to form a partnership when, to everything that you just said about coming to a new country, learning learning a new culture, learning a new language, some of these other barriers that are outside of football, and then obviously the chemistry that's developed on the pitch. Right, we have no idea exactly how some of these trainings are going, whether or not he's training as a winger or training as a 10, whatever the case may be. I just don't think that he's one of the biggest reasons why he hasn't settled. Is the reason because, well, quite frankly, like one of the things that's like, who is his partner on the pitch, right? Who is the one guy that he has chemistry with when there's nothing but instability in certain positions, right? It's really hard. And I don't, you mentioned Florian Wirtz, it's a little bit of a different scenario, but that being said, it's like when you think about all the things that he came in with and all the hype that he's come in with, right? Like who's the one guy on the pitch that he actually has that chemistry, with, right? And I think that, it almost puts a player on an island a little bit, right? Because now all of a sudden you have to be the guy that is making things work. But that being said, you don't necessarily have an outlet. You don't have another player to play off yet. You know what I mean? And I think that makes it even 10 times harder for him.
Yeah, absolutely. You're spot on again.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. So, all right. So as we're pushing into minute 45, we are going to talk a little bit about your projected starting 11, and then also your prediction for the match. So let's go ahead and get into it. And let's talk about your starting 11. Who would you like to see? And is your starting 11 something that is going to match up with Mr. Thomas Frank?
No, it's not. I just put that straight out there. And I certainly like Thomas Frank. I think I can hopefully get away with saying that. So if you don't mind, I'll do my team first and hear me out about this. So I think I've touched on the defence. So hopefully it doesn't come as too much of a shock. So for me, Vicario in goal, I think he's proved, isn't he, in the week about why he should be Tottenham's number one. Some excellent saves kept us in the game against Monaco. Then I'd have Spence at right back going 1v1 against Jack Grealish. It's not going to happen, but I'd have I'd have Gray at left back because I think he done well there in the week, and I think him against Ndai I feel okay with. It's not ideal, but it's a situation we're in, and I'd keep Danso and Van der Ven as the centre backs. But the beauty of that defence is we can swap and interchange the likes of Gray and Van der Ven if it doesn't work, or no one can deal with Ndai. So that's my thinking behind it. Midfield, then, we have to get the balance right. I think it's enough of seeing Bentancur and Paulinho together in this type of game where we want to win. So I'd have Paulinho in the 6. I'd have perhaps Sarr in the 8.
Ooh.
I have got Simmons in the 10, but you've convinced me about putting him on the left. But I'll keep him in the 10 for now. Then the forward line, one definitely picks himself. Mohamed Kudus on the right. Odegaard on the left, for me, I think has been our most promising player on that left. I referenced that earlier. And I think Moani up top. I don't think he will, but that's what I would do because he had a cameo against Monaco. I liked what I saw. And again,
I did too.
To get him used to this. Yeah, exactly. And to get him used to the team, throw him in from the start. But that would be my team. But at the same time, like I said, and you mentioned it there, Simmons on the left, you maybe think is a potentially really good idea. And then Richarlison against his old club. So, if I looked at this and analysed it for even longer, I could probably change it. But in terms of what I think Frank will actually do, I think his midfield 3 will be Paulinho, Bentancur and Sarr. That's what I think it will be. And I think he will play Simmons on that left. And I don't think he'll start Moani. He'll probably start Richarlison up top. So 2 or 3 changes from my team to Frank's team.
Interesting. I actually wouldn't have a problem with a Papsar, Xavi Simons, Paulinho in midfield, because at the end of the day, we one of the things that we haven't seen quite a bit is with Bentancur playing in that I guess you could say traditional box to box. He's far more defensive. He seems to be a little bit more risk averse, and I think a lot of people will go back to the to the injury, and since the injury, he just has been a little bit more risk averse versus his production on set pieces, right? So in the run of play, not necessarily getting as high as we would like, and it just seems like his best attributes seem to be on set pieces and not necessarily in the run of play. But from that standpoint, when I think about this game in a vacuum, I actually don't have a problem with us being a little bit more defensive minded, right? It doesn't for me. I don't have a problem with that, right? I think we're a little bit more better as a counterattacking team than a team that actually works in the run of play or in the build up. So from that standpoint, obviously Vicario in goal. And listen, I get that Vicario is not like one of the most popular Tottenham Hotspur players at the moment. But that being said, there is a vast gap between number 1 and number 2. Kinski is not ready to handle the rigors or the responsibility of playing goalkeeper in the Premier League. The conversation of whether or not this team needs a new number 1, that's a conversation for a different day. But as of right now, Vicario is far and away the number 1 for this team. And of course, you mentioned the midweek against Monaco. I couldn't agree with you more. I actually have on the left-hand side, Jed Spence playing on the left-hand side. The one time that we did see Spence on the right-hand side, I think it was 3 matches ago, where they actually gave Porro a rest. I think it might have been against
it was awful. I remember. Yeah, it was the Wolves.
Yeah. Again, there you go, against Wolves. Thank you for that one. And he wasn't really all that great. And by the way, he's a natural right back anyway, right? And he just was really just not great against Wolves. So from that standpoint, it almost feels like he's probably going to be entrenched in that left back spot when Udogi's not there. I got Van de Ven obviously at the left center back position, Danso on the right, and then on the right back spot, I actually do have Pedro Porro in that spot yet again. Just because I don't think that Thomas Frank necessarily trusts Jed Spence on the right hand side as much as he trusts him on the left hand side. And so from that standpoint, that's my back 5. My midfield 3 is going to be Paulinho, Bentancur, and Papsar playing a little bit higher up. With the first rotation coming off the bench would probably be Lucas Bergvall. And then my attacking 3 is going to be Xavi Simons on the left, Kudus on the right with Kolo Muani up top.
Good team. Oh.
Yeah. And then with Richarlison being the first sub off the bench in like that 60, 65 minute range. I do think Richarlison definitely gets into this game, and I don't think it's going to be like for a cameo appearance in the 80th minute type of thing. I think, depending on depending on the, how many minutes Kolo Muani has in his legs versus, what he's actually showing us on the pitch, I would probably assume that's probably going to be right somewhere in that 60-65 minute range.
Yeah, fair enough. Good shot.
Yeah. And again, I just think that, to be a little bit more defensive minded, potentially being a little bit, to rely a little bit more on the counterattack, because it seems that when Spurs do score, it does tend to come off the counterattack. And I think from this standpoint, I think we get better numbers coming forward off the attack, and especially when we play a little bit more mid block, coming off a press. I think our team performs way better.
Definitely does. Yeah, absolutely. I like your team. I think that's probably something similar to what we see as well.
All right, so let's go into score predictions, Harry. How do you think this one's going to play out? You mentioned that this is potentially going to be a banana skin. So banana skin it up, my friend.
I hate to do it, but I'm someone who's just honest, and at the same time, that is absolutely my downfall. And I do think this will be a banana skin. So I really, really do hope I'm wrong, and I can't stress that enough. But I rave about Everton going forward this year. So I'm going to go with 3-1 Everton, but I really hope I'm wrong. I think the reason I know it hurt, I know it's awful, isn't it? But the reason I've gone with it is I think Grealish will start on that left, and Porro I do think will start on that right. And this is nothing against Porro. I don't want to single him out too much, but it's more the form of Grealish. I just think he wins this battle, as does Die on the other side. I think Spence, unfortunately, will have a little bit of a nightmare. Maybe loses arguably his first 1v1 battle. Them two, there's something about them. Everton need a response from the loss against City, a week ago. I don't know. I just think there's a few uncomfortable conversations maybe to be had after this game. So I'm going to go with 3-1 Everton, but I really do hope I'm wrong.
I hope you're wrong too. But that being said, one of the things that I will say is the fact that Spurs actually have their road form is actually really good.
Absolutely.
There seems to be a differential between Spurs on the road versus at home, and it's not because they take their opponents lightly at home. It's just for whatever reason they just haven't been able to get off on the right foot at home. But that being said, I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw in this one, and I think that the combination of Betancourt, Porro, and Danso is going to be enough to lock up that left hand side. I don't see that's the thing is there going to be moments where Jack Grealish is going to get free or create space enough to put balls in the box 100%. I firmly do believe that Jack Grealish is that type of player where even if you try to lock him down, he's still going to find moments in areas where he's going to be able to create space and wreak havoc. And I still think that is going to play a role. But that being said, over the course of the 90, I think those three could at least minimize the damage. I think they can. Me personally, I believe in those three from a defensive side. But that being said, I think it's going to be a 2-2 draw. And I think our goals this week are going to come from Papsar, and I'm going to say Randall Kolo Muani is going to get one as well too.
Nice. Would you take a draw? Do you want if I ask that?
Say would I take a draw? No, me personally, I think taking a draw is going to put this team behind the 8 ball, right? Because eventually they're going to need 3 points, right? Mm-hmm. And when you look at the upcoming fixture schedule, it's like, where are these 3 points going to come against? You know what I mean? That's the thing. It's like they surrendered points against Bournemouth. They surrendered points against Wolves. They surrendered points where when I was looking at the schedule at the start of the season, and I saw it from essentially the opening day against Burnley all the way up until November 1st when they get Chelsea. There was a possibility where if they come out of that with anywhere between 17 and 20 points, that's just a wonderful start to the season. But that being said, it's when you drop points, all of a sudden you make it even harder on yourself, because we're now getting into a portion of the schedule where there's going to be heavy hitters everywhere, whether that's Chelsea, Liverpool, Man United. We're actually going to start to actually get into the real meat of the schedule. And so, for me, it's okay, well, is this team capable of treading water to the January transfer window, or is there going to be opportunities for them to very much solidify themselves in being a top 6 team, right? And so these are the type of the matches where we absolutely need 3 points. There's no excuses around it. I think you brought up the interesting question about whether or not they're just settling for draws and some of these other things without necessarily, essentially taking steps forward. But that being said, it's I hate the idea of a 2-2 draw, but that being said, when I look at it, it's like I think Everton are going to score. The question is how are we going to minimize it, and where are our goals going to be coming from? Because this team has shown the ability to work their way back into a match after conceding early. You know what I mean? So from that standpoint, they absolutely can fight to at least get to a draw. And that's the way I kind of see this one. I think they concede early to Everton, and then we pull even late, and then that's it. For me, this almost feels like Brighton all over again. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a little bad shout, to be honest with you. Yeah, I think I can see where you're coming from with that one.
Yeah. So, all right, that's gonna do it. Harry, is there any last things you want to say before we close this one out?
Nothing apart from thank you so much for having me. I always enjoy coming on here, and in terms of my own channel, I'm very proud of my own kind of American fan base. I've said before that in terms of I think American kind of audience that I've got, is a better way of putting it, have been fantastic and love their support. And I always love coming on here and connecting with our amazing fans over in the US. So thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And quickly, we do actually have to announce a collaboration, don't we? We're going to be doing some stuff together, and I'm actually looking forward to it, as I will be recording some stuff for Harry's channel, and I do appreciate that, Harry, and it's going to be fun. I think I'm going to get into the nuts and bolts of some of the financial aspects of Tottenham Hotspur, because that's kind of where my bread and butter is. I absolutely love the business side of football. And I think it's absolutely intriguing. But that being said, I'm looking forward to this. And Harry, I actually have to say a big thanks to you.
No, I want to thank you, because I think you're extremely talented and I always like listening to the podcast. And I just looked to you, and I was honest with you, wasn't I? And just went, look, I think I love you as part of the channel. I love what you do. So I really appreciate you agreeing to do this. And if you ever need a guest, absolutely always come on. And thanks to the chat as always. If you haven't already, what you're doing, if you haven't liked, subscribe, make sure you do to the channel here. And if you want to head over, I do also have my own channel. It's called Harry Scarfe. Contains my own Tottenham podcast within, called the Scarfe Spurs podcast. But on the channel, Harry Scarfe is where you'll find Steve's brilliant videos who being let you all know in terms of how they look, etc. But it's something that's really, really exciting, and a collaboration definitely between you've got here an English channel and an American channel to combine, and I think it's the way it should be, because we all have the same goal of wanting Spurs to succeed. We all love our club, so we come together, and good minds think alike. And Steve is fantastic, so thank you very much for coming on board.
Absolutely, man. And the gratefulness and is all on from this side as well too, man. I really do appreciate it. And again, I'm looking forward to it too, and I'm looking forward to doing my first recording as well too. And we'll see how it goes. So again, I do want to thank you for jumping on today, and I want to thank everybody that participated in chat. Chris One Football, Wayne Bonner, AK Shags, and all those that were tuning in as well to do. Quickly, tomorrow the Hotspur watch along will go down at I think 12:20 as we prepare ourselves for Spurs versus Everton. So that will be tomorrow here on the channel, and of course this upcoming week as well too. U.S. men's national team content, as well as Tottenham Hotspur content as well too. And so definitely make sure you hit the good old like and subscribe buttons, and then also the notification bell so you don't miss out on any content here on Stateside Footy. I want to thank Harry Scarfe one more time, and I also want to thank everybody for tuning in. Hopefully tomorrow we walk away with the 3 points, because again, at the end of the day, that's what this is all about: winning titles, winning trophies, and beating Everton off the pitch. So until tomorrow, you guys have a great Saturday. Thank you, guys.